with great pleasure that I welcome you all to the New York City Employment and Training Coalition's 2022 conference, Advancing Talent and Equity. Advancing Talent and Equity for a Thriving Economy. Not only our first conference in over 3 years, but also NYCETC's 25th anniversary. My name is Annie Garneva. I've had the honor of working with many of you over the last 11 years at the coalition, and I've had the privilege of serving as the interim CEO for the last 10 months. Beyond its death toll and healthcare tragedies, the pandemic and subsequent recession highlighted and deepened our city's already unbearable inequity and uneven access to economic growth. Over 1 million New Yorkers lost their jobs. And while the job losses impacted workers across every socioeconomic experience, the losses disproportionately impacted women, people of color, low-income workers, immigrants, and historically marginalized New Yorkers. These are the New Yorkers that you, the coalition's members and partners, never stopped supporting through training and job placement services over the last 2.5 years, despite a skyrocketing demand for workforce services, while budget cuts, staff layoffs, and burnout ran rampant. In fact, our members met the pandemic's turmoil with incredible innovation and urgency, pivoting programming, developing digital curricula, and deepening wraparound services. New York City's workforce development community is truly exceptional in its diversity, tenacity, and steadfast commitment to ensuring that this city's remarkable economic opportunities are driven by and for New Yorkers and our communities. Today's conference is a celebration of the field's imagination and work, or as I have lovingly been referring to it while organizing this conference for the last 2 months, an array of idea appetizers to whet your palate and inspire you to build and collaborate. Before we begin, I would like to express my great appreciation to our incredible team, Stephanie Birmingham, who you met up front, running our registration desk, Lena Bissay, who you'll see today stage managing, and MJ Delgado Roche, who is back there doing Zoom, for all that they do and for helping to pull together today's program. I would also like to acknowledge our board of directors, representing 22 of the coalition's over 200 members, all incredible leaders who provide an invaluable service to the coalition and our great city each and every day. I would also like to thank the volunteers here today who are giving their time to help produce today's event. We literally could not have done this without you. Many people here today are dedicated members of the coalition and our work to educate the field and increase investments in our communities, while many others are new to the coalition. Whether a committed member and partner or joining for the first time, you have come together to listen, share, and learn from each other with one common mission: become better at our shared craft of providing skills, training, and education into high-quality jobs and careers, and to work together to advocate to advance policy, practice, and outcomes for the city's workforce system. Throughout the day, please take a moment to share your experience in social media using the hashtag NYCETC 2022 conference and tag us at NYCETC_org and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. This year's conference theme, Advancing Talent and Equity for a Thriving Economy, will examine the systemic, programmatic, and business challenges and impactful solutions found within the workforce and economic development system. The morning's agenda is centered around the city's vision for an improved workforce ecosystem and equitable recovery. We're excited to hear from Mayor Eric Adams and other leaders from the mayor's office, city agencies, and the city council on their vision and plans for creating a stronger system and services for New Yorkers and businesses, and how service providers can collaborate and grow. As the day goes, we'll examine the landscape of workforce services and how organizations across the system are collaborating and developing functional and actionable programming for their clients to access careers in our 21st century economy. Themes for the afternoon slate of programming include program structures and funding, talent development, the Great Resignation, labor market needs, and the role of unions in organizing. Throughout the day, you'll also hear from your peers through TED Talk style presentations focused on innovative solutions to problems many of you have experienced in the workforce development sector. We hope you will be inspired to connect and implement similar efforts within your own organizations. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Kathleen Culhane, President of Nontraditional Employment for Women and NYCETC's Board Chair.
Hi, good morning all. Again, on behalf of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition and their board of directors, I want to welcome you to our conference today. And what I am confident will be a dynamic and informative series of conversations and presentations that will help us recognize the tremendous achievements of our members and the complexity of this post-pandemic workforce landscape. As the president of NEW, an organization celebrating its 44th year, thank you. I lead a talented team that is committed to training, placing, and supporting women in the skill-building trades in New York City and beyond. The tradeswomen that we work with were identified as essential workers 2 years ago, on the front lines, making sure that hospitals and other care-providing facilities were open from the start of the pandemic. And during those years, we pivoted from in-person to virtual to hybrid. We found new ways to support our community, and we kept our graduates on track while caring for each other. And I am guessing that sounds very familiar to many of you. COVID has changed our work, but our coalition never wavered. We dug in, and we really dug in, and provided pathways to stability and success. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. At a truly transformative moment in the history of our city, the New York City Employment and Training Coalition is poised to reimagine the intersection between workforce development and economic development, and to position all New Yorkers for success in the 21st century. This would not have been possible without the skill and dedication of a truly powerful, women-led team. And I want to take a moment here to acknowledge and thank Annie Garneva for each one of her 11 years of commitment to the coalition, and especially for her stewardship and diligence during these last 2. Thank you, Annie. And at this time, I am very pleased and proud to introduce you to the new Chief Executive Officer of the NYCETC, Greg Morris. Greg joins us having spent 25 years in New York City as a leader, practitioner, and advocate on both the city and state level for education and workforce development. He is now tasked with guiding New York City Employment and Training Coalition's efforts to respond to and transform a fractured workforce system and close the disproportionate gaps in employment and earnings New Yorkers face across race, gender, age, and industry. It is fair to say that it is a heavy lift and it will take time, but Greg, we got your back. Thank you.
I wanted to start out there because that's where my career started. 25 years in the sector. It started in education and workforce development programs. And I'm deeply, deeply proud of the teams and partners that I've worked with over the years to build communities, to be able to ensure job readiness and success, to move folk from a first job to a future job, to a career, to an education plan, to a credential, and to a degree, because that's what you do, and that's what we do together. And that's the pathway to economic mobility. That's the pathway to ensuring that someone can live in a city that, can we agree, is increasingly more and more difficult to afford. It's truly an honor to be responsible for the coalition right now. And I want to move us quickly to the panels and chats because we have a stacked deck today of extraordinary leaders from every sector and every corner of our city to stand together today to share their thinking with you about what they believe the future holds. But it's important for us to agree on the following point: that unless we start thinking about how we do together, we are not going to be able to heal a fractured workforce development system. And by the way, and I think we can all agree as well, that if our sole focus is simply on finding jobs, that's not enough. That it's a career path that will always be the difference maker. And to ensure that that's possible, you have to be at the front. You have to lead the pack, and you have to explain to folks how to make that real. Are you in on that? Is that something you believe in? Is that something that matters to you? We have reckoned with an unimaginable crisis in public health, and it disproportionately impacted Black and brown New Yorkers, lower income New Yorkers, folks in high poverty neighborhoods. That's what we've been through. And it's not enough right now to stand and say, there's a North Star, we don't want to go back. It's not enough just to say it. We have to create the scaffolding to reach that North Star. And that requires systemic change because of the persistent and structural inequities that disproportionately impact Black and brown New Yorkers, lower income New Yorkers, and folks who live in higher poverty neighborhoods. The way we teach and train, the way we partner, the way we fund and employ, the way we organize has to change. But the way we think about our city's value and purpose as it relates to social mobility and equity and affordable has to change first. That's what today is about. That's what today is planting the flag to focus on and believe in. This 200-member coalition represents the interests and desires of 600,000 New Yorkers. 600,000. That's 15% of the entire workforce. And that's a body, by the way, that we work with, that you work with, that the coalition work with, primarily made of women who still earn 80 cents for every dollar a man does. It's made up of the 16 to 24s whose unemployment rate skyrocketed during the pandemic and hasn't yet bounced back. It's made up of folks we train who are older adults who have to make really hard choices every month about food, medicine, and rent, and are thinking about, for the first time in their lives, a second act career because they got to figure out how to live in the city. And who else is made up? Who else is it that we train? It's immigrants and parents and NYCHA residents. It's justice-involved individuals. It's the homeless, just to name a few. You're focused on their success. You're focused on they're ready for what's next. You're focused on preparing them for a 21st century economy. And I know this, as I've said, because I've been a part of teams that have done this work for a very long time, working in collaboration and coordination with teams and individuals, each of you, who don't get caught up in where someone starts from. Don't get lost in the perceived limitations that some folks have. Like you, I believe in resilience. Like you, it's about being relentless about potential. We are the largest workforce association in the country. That's what you are part of. And that makes us a force for the change we seek. So today, my friends, my peers, my colleagues, whether you're an educator or a job developer, whether you're a reporter, an analyst, you're an agency representative or a union rep, an employer or an elected official, because they're all coming today, whether you're an intern or the mayor of New York City who's coming today to see you, take the time you need to look outward at what matters. Take the time you need to look inward about what you're going to do, because each of us carries the weight of changing the course. And each of us is going to be responsible for fulfilling our city's collective promise. Once again, I thank you for allowing me this tremendous opportunity. And like you know, we got work to do. Thank you, everybody. I need to acknowledge our tremendous sponsors that make today possible. Without them, we couldn't put this together. We couldn't gather together in this space. Our premier and supporter level sponsors, JPMorgan, the New York City Economic Development Corporation, the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development, Common Point Queens, Grant Associates, and the Lester Fund. So generous, so supportive. Please give them a round of applause. And please join us in welcoming one of our conference sponsors, Rafia Zahir-Uddin, Vice President of Global Philanthropy at JPMorgan Chase and Company. Please come and join us right now. Thank you so much. Please, we need a large round of applause for this one.
Wow, I'm not sure how to follow that, but I'll try. Good morning. It's wonderful to be in community with you all. I see some familiar faces, colleagues, mentors, and peers. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the amazing team at the New York City Employment Training Coalition for coordinating today's conference. And I also really want to welcome Greg to his new role at the organization. It seems like he's hit the ground running. My name is Rafia. I'm part of the corporate responsibility team at JPMorgan Chase. In my role, I help oversee and lead our firm's philanthropic investment strategy in the Northeast. So not just New York, but everything down from Maine to New York. While I'm here today representing one of New York City's largest private employers and as a funder, I come to this work with over a decade of public service, most recently having spent the last 5.5 years working for the City of New York on workforce development policy and strategy. I not only understand the challenges that the workforce development community is facing, but I've been at the forefront co-designing solutions with some of you in the room to help New Yorkers with barriers to employment. I think we've all heard through the remarks this morning how disproportionately impacted people of color, Black and Brown, immigrant, young adults without a formal education and have had with the pandemic and with their employment opportunities. At JPMorgan Chase, we're invested in ensuring that there is an equitable economic recovery for all New Yorkers, and we're bringing the full force of our firm's expertise and resources. So that doesn't just include money, it includes the work we do in policy and research and capacity building to support organizations on the ground. In line with our $30 billion racial equity commitment to support economic opportunity for Black, Latino, and Latina communities in New York, we're prioritizing initiatives that support transversal skills development and support people of color to have the skills they need to succeed in a changing economy. This includes sector-specific investments in tech and tech-enabled jobs for New Yorkers that are pursuing careers in as programmers, as coders, as customer success and operations associates, but also thinking ahead of how we're building and seeding investments to support career pathway opportunities in clean energy and clean tech. Everything we do has a through line of ensuring that we're supporting equity and career mobility for people of color. I believe that we're all here today with similar motivations. We want to better understand the workforce landscape. We want to understand how we can better support the ecosystem, and more importantly, how do we better collaborate? Things that you've heard Greg talk about in his speech. As I wrap up, I'll leave you and hope that you take away from the presentations and panel discussions today an opportunity to think collectively of how we can work together to advance equity, and also opportunities for job seekers in New York, because we realize we can't do it alone. We need employers working with training providers, working with government, working with employment, employers and employment agencies. And I hope that we all find opportunities to connect and network today and connect and network to work together. Thank you.